So a question that comes to mind is
Hmm.
what basis do you have, or what reasons do you have for rejecting certain verses? The verses
Mm.
you, I don't know if the right word is reject, but the ones that you don't believe in.
Hmm.
What general reason do you have for not believing in those verses?
Yeah, well, like I said, I believe was probably not the right word. Maybe associate,
Okay.
because if you read
Mm.
many of the books, many of the stories in there, they were for a specific time. Hmm.
Did you grow up in Fresno?
I did not actually. I was born in Madera. It's a small town outside of Fresno,
Yeah.
but I grew up in Kerman, which is another small town. Fresno surrounded by dozens of small towns. So I grew up out in a small town, and yeah, it was really cool. It was same. I had the same students with me from first grade all the way till graduation. So it was very close, and I had family there, and yeah, it was nice. I enjoyed growing up in a small town versus the city.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And are you finished? So you're finished with Fresno State, or almost finished, or
Fresno Pacific,
Fresno
actually.
Pacific?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
As not quite finished.
Okay.
Almost.
Yeah.
I'm at the last year.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
Are you getting your master's right now or bachelor's
Bachelor's
in?
social work.
Okay.
Yeah.
What kind of social work?
Well, I'm actually leaving that option open.
Mm-hmm.
It's at the moment undecided. I know the realm I want to be in, but in which specific department or with which specific population, I'm not quite too sure yet.
Okay.
But I'm excited about that. I normally never really plan that far ahead.
Okay.
I like to leave the future for the future. I don't really I think it's fun to kind of come across something and,
Mm-hmm.
oh, look at this new job just popped up, or, oh, okay, like this made me feel some type of way.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of like to just let that unfold as it happens.
You strike me as a really social person.
Mm-hmm.
It seems,
Extremely.
yeah, as somebody who's a really good conversationalist. So
Mhm.
it wouldn't be surprising to me if you have a ton of friends. Do you have a ton of friends?
I have so many friends.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I really do. Yeah. I was blessed with a lot of friends. Um, wasn't very close with my family when I was growing up. So the friends I did make when I was younger, um, I'm still friends with a handful of them. It's been 2 decades since some of my early friends. But yeah, I had to kind of choose my family and make my family,
Mm-hmm.
my chosen family, essentially. So I place a lot of importance on my friendships and cultivating them and developing them.
Yeah.
Mm.
So how would you say your relationship generally is with your family? If you don't mind me asking, I'm just curious about it.
Not bad, but it's just my mother. She was somewhat of a black sheep, so
Okay.
she kind of went off and did her own thing and separated herself from her side of the family.
Mm-hmm.
And then I didn't grow up with my father or his side, so kind of a double whammy there. I didn't really have a chance to get
Mm-hmm.
close with any of my grandparents or my cousins. But there was some aunts and uncles who were there. They were around. And now, as I'm getting older, or as my parents are getting older, my mother's reconnected with her family. So she spends a lot of time with them, and I'm starting to spend more time with them. And my father and I have recently started a relationship. So yeah, it took 31 years,
Mm-hmm.
but better later than never.
Definitely.
And yeah, I'm trying to connect more with his side.
Yeah.
but the relationships are still very new.
Yeah.
Not really, the connections really aren't that deep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. There's a lot. I'm sure there's a ton to unpack there.
Oh yeah, that
Yeah.
was just the nutshell.
Yeah. So one of the first things that you asked me was surrounding the idea of truth.
Mm-hmm.
Why is that? I don't have people asking me about truth every day. It doesn't happen.
Mm-hmm.
And you did. Why is that?
Well, initially, my mind, when you say truth, it kind of, I sort of go to a place where we talked about how it's different for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
It's never, the way I view it, truth is, it's never quite the same. So someone's truth of what happened, let's say, for example, I've been in situations with friends where maybe we had some disagreements. Maybe there was a situation where I saw the situation from one point of view and my friend saw it from another. Well, the way we walk away from that and the story we form, although it was the same situation and we were both there at the same time, we still kind of view that differently. Mm-hmm. There's always going to be a few little things that they're slightly deviated from the way you experienced it, from the way I experienced it. And so that's interesting to me, the fact that it's never really the same, and I think when we think of truth, we speak to people about it, we're trying to match it up and kind of get on the same exact page, which we could be on the same page, but it's not quite going to be the same. And I think acknowledging that already kind of sets you up for a better outcome if you're not trying to convince somebody of how you believe it should or it played out. Because it's just going to be different. And I think that kind of just goes back to who we are as people. We're all different, and it's kind of just digging in, accepting that, and kind of appreciating that, versus trying to argue with that.
So I would say that the reason that we see things differently, sometimes that might be due to imperfections within ourselves. Mm-hmm. But whatever it is that we believe, those imperfections are going to sort of taint the way that we see a particular situation. Your
influences, whatever has influenced you in your life. And I mean, there's many different reasons why two people would walk away from a situation, the same situation, but have a completely different story about it. It could be just the experiences maybe that I've experienced and you haven't, or it could just be, maybe some stuff we got blocking us or going on within ourselves. Many different reasons why, but again, that kind of goes back to if you approach the situation or any situation already with the knowledge that we're all coming from a different place and we're all kind of at a different level. I'm not sure what levels I'm referring to exactly, but we'll just say generally a different level. Then you already understand that we may never exactly quite see eye to eye, but we can get pretty close, or we can try.
Do you believe in that the truth is relative? Something that drives me, I don't think I understand it. And at least up to this point in time, I disagree. When people say, well, that's your truth. That doesn't make sense to me. Because there is my opinion
Mm-hmm.
and the way that I see things. And as I said, I think that there's going to be imperfections
Mm-hmm.
in the way that I see things because I'm just human.
Mm-hmm.
But that doesn't mean that there isn't the truth.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say that one reason that we may see things differently would be due to our limitations.
Mm-hmm.
But that doesn't change the truth.
Okay, yeah. Well, one of the main reasons why people find themselves in situations that their views are differing majorly, it could be because of these influences we're talking about: religion, spirituality, their most inner truths, right? Kind of what they look up to and kind of what drives them.
Mm-hmm.
And for many people, there's a religious or spiritual aspect that drives them, and they hold on to those truths, their values, their morals, their principles. And we definitely know those are different for everybody. Like they vary across the board. And there's so many different type of values that would distinguish people and kind of categorize people into different religions or different groups, and that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
And essentially our truths would be different, and it's like you got your truths, I got my truths. I think the most important part in any connection or any transaction is not imposing that truth on somebody. If they're willing to listen,
Mm-hmm.
then they're willing to listen.
Yeah, and I think that's really important. Not imposing
Mm-hmm.
My worldview
Mm-hmm.
on you and vice versa.
Mm-hmm.
I do think that we ought to agree on that so that we can live peacefully,
Oh, yeah.
so that we can be neighbors.
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm convinced that we're never going to have a society where everybody believes the same thing.
Definitely
Where
not. No.
we have
That would be pretty boring.
Where we have one religion, where everybody says like, yeah, that's it right there.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that we're all going to come to agreement.
Mm-hmm.
That would be idealistic, and I think that that's unattainable.
Mm-hmm.
So the best that we can do is agree to disagree.
Yeah. But beyond that, I'm pretty open mind. I'm very open-minded actually to most. I love learning about different people's religions and traditions, cultures, their spiritual practices. I have a variety of mine. I very spiritual when it comes to meditation and energy and kind of different people's auras or their overall vibe that they bring. I use the word vibe a lot.
Yeah, I think that's a word that's been used a lot nowadays.
It definitely is, and it's a word that's been interchanged with like energy or someone's.
I find myself using that word.
Yeah, it's just someone's maybe their gravitational pull or whatever it is. So I believe in harnessing those energies. I have a lot of crystals. I believe in the healing properties of the natural things in earth, rocks, and my mother and father are very connected to nature. And although I didn't experience that with them growing up and didn't really know that about them, as I came into that myself, I have now realized that I am a different version of my parents combined. And it's really cool that kind of got passed on.
Yeah.
But circling back a little bit, one of the main points I think is very important to highlight in the agreeing to disagree part.
Yeah.
It's also take one step further. a very important aspect is just don't, like, you can't, like we said, unpose. Don't
Mm-hmm.
harm anybody. As long as
Mm-hmm.
what you're doing and what you believe doesn't hurt anybody
Mm-hmm.
or put anybody down or obviously physically harm anybody, then to me, then that's okay. That's you're on a good path, you know. And I think it gets really tricky when some beliefs start to marginalize people or
Mm-hmm.
make them feel less than.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of the area that I try to avoid as much as
Yeah.
possible.
So many questions because you brought up crystals.
Mm-hmm.
And now we circled back to, right, not imposing
Mm-hmm.
our beliefs on each other. And this brings up another question, though.
Mm-hmm.
So our beliefs are, I think, inevitably going to end up offending someone else. I don't think that it's possible to have a belief system that isn't going to have a feature in it that will offend someone else's feelings.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I think that's inevitable.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
So would you say that you would be okay with being neighbors with someone who holds a belief system that contains within it something that offends you, something that hurts your feelings?
Mm.
Would you say that you would be okay with being neighbors with someone like that? As far as I can think of for myself, I would 100% be okay
Yeah.
having a neighbor
Yeah.
that has a belief system that contains something in it that offends me, as long as we can respect each other and get along.
Yeah.
And it seems to me like we're losing that.
Mm-hmm.
People are saying now that words are violence,
Mm-hmm.
which I think is not a good way to think.
Mm-hmm.
But so do you think that you could respect someone and be neighbors with someone who, and even friends with somebody who has believes something that might
something
possibly
different.
offend you?
Yeah. For me, I do have friends who have different beliefs than I do. They're obviously not beliefs that are harming people directly, probably. I mean, if I had to think about it, I'm not really following the trail of exactly kind of what their beliefs are. It's one of those situations where maybe we don't talk about those kind of things on a regular basis.
It's hard.
Yeah, and it's I can be your friend, I can be your neighbor. I mean, I'm around people every day who believe something different. And I think it just goes back to that idea of if we're passing by each other, if we see each other, we'll be courteous to each other.
Mm-hmm.
We can act, like we're fine with each other. I don't think we have to sit down with everybody and say, hey, why do you believe that? Or let me tell you what I believe. That kind of goes back to that idea of I'll share my ideas and who I am with somebody who's willing to know more about that or listen to it. I could live next to somebody. I can be courteous as long as they are not disturbing the peace with their ideas, then I won't disturb the peace with mine.
Okay.
And as far as you mentioned something a little while ago about taking offense and offending people.
Yeah.
And I used to get offended a lot when I was younger. I had some beliefs that were pretty headstrong, and I was spreading information and going out and kind of trying to rally people to get on my side. And when somebody told me something different, I did get offended. What I realized as I've gone through some more experiences in my life is that it's up to me if I want to get offended or not. It's really kind of like with anger, like you have a choice to get mad or don't get mad.
Yeah.
And I think if somebody's offended by what I'm saying, they don't have to listen.
Yeah.
You can walk away. If I'm going to hold like a little rally or conference, like you don't have to be here, go where you don't feel offended. And it's not wrong to say that, because I'm not going to go to your conference or whatever you're holding and say, I'm offended. It's like, well, you chose to come here and you're standing here. So you really set yourself up for that.
Yeah.
So yeah, I am who I am. And if it's hard to, to kind of apologize for that.
Yeah.
If I didn't even invite you necessarily,
I remember you mentioning being Christian. And I asked you this at a coffee shop? They had wine there too, right? They had wine and coffee. Nice little place here in Fresno. Yeah. Is this still in existence?
It is still in existence. It's called St. Joaquin, downtown Fresno.
Okay. Yeah.
But they stopped serving coffee.
Okay.
So now they're just a wine bar.
Interesting. Okay. That still sounds good.
Yeah. Yeah, I love wine.
Yeah. So
I love wine more than I love coffee. So it's a win for me.
It's kind of hard to decide which is better, wine or coffee. I like black coffee. I like dry wine. Those two are two of just my favorite things in the world.
Yeah. I'm more of a hot tea kind of guy.
Hot tea? That sounds great too. I need to give that more of a try. Yeah, I've only had I don't have that frequently.
The green tea.
Yeah.
It's what all the ancient.
But anyway, back to what I wanted to say. So I remember asking you a question about Jesus making himself exclusive, where he says, "There's no way to the Father except through me," which is exclusive. It implies that there's no other belief besides belief in himself that will save people. And a lot of people will feel offended by that, I assume, because it's so exclusive. Personally, I ask myself, well, is it true? Even if it stings a little, my desire to know whether it's true or not is much stronger.
Is that the only way, basically?
Like, is it the only way? Even if it stings, I want to know if it's the only way. So that does sound like a belief that offends a lot of people. I would assume that. And I can sympathize with that. What are your thoughts on that?
So many. So when it comes to Christianity, I, for the most part, have been Christian my whole life. I started going to church with some close family friends when I was 3 years old. And it was a very specific type of Christianity. It was very radical. It was an apostolic Pentecostal church.
Okay.
And the standards are very high. The preachers are very excited. And even the organization is very exclusive. It's a very tight-knit community. And when you're a part of it, you're almost really not a part of anything else. It becomes your whole world. And so I, off and on, as I was growing up, went to church here and there. When I was 15, I decided for myself that I, as a teenager, approaching young adulthood, that I wanted to be more a part of the organization. So I got really involved for a few years, 15, 16, 17, and it became my everything. I only hung out with people from the church, people from my youth group. I didn't associate with anything that I thought was too worldly. So the standards that they had put forth were very like, we only listen to Christian music. We don't watch any movies. We don't go to any ball games. So for a few years,
Even ball games, huh?
Yeah, I mean, there was something about the competitive nature of it, and there's
that's
a little bit of
extreme
a gray area for me there. But I listened. I followed the rules that they set forth. I was very headstrong about that. But
was this a Spanish-speaking church? I'm just curious about that.
it was not
Okay.
my specific church. But yeah, many apostolic churches here in the Central Valley in California are predominantly Hispanic apostolic churches. So eventually I left the organization. I was 18. I started meeting more people in my school, connecting with people who had different ideas. And as I got closer to them and started building these relationships, there were members in the church who did not want that for me.
Okay.
Even my pastor at the time. And that didn't sit right with me.
They didn't want you to be associating with friends outside of the church, I suppose, that you were finding in school or in college.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, and so I took that very personal because I love connecting with so many different types of people. I didn't want that limit on me. It didn't really connect with my personal values.
Okay.
So I left the organization, and since then I have not been a part of any specific church or organization or group. That was about 14 years ago. And I do carry a lot of the Christian principles with me still till this day. And in specific, in reference to Jesus, I've just always been fascinated by his story, by the story of who he was, how he came here, how he got here, and how he left. But more specifically, the things he said, and most Bibles, what Jesus said because it's in red.
Yeah.
So out of the whole book that's been printed for years and years and years, the red text, you would assume, this is some of the most important stuff in the book, right? And a lot of the stuff that Jesus said, I think is very general. I think it can be applied to whatever group you're a part of. Thou shalt not kill, and be nice to your neighbor.
Yeah.
Respect your neighbor. Don't argue back. Like, if you're gonna make it worse on yourself, like if somebody does something wrong to you, don't do something wrong to them.
Yeah, I think one of the most powerful things he said was love your enemies.
Yeah, and I think that what's interesting about that is you find those similar values and principles in many different religions and many different organizations or spiritual beliefs, and those are kind of what I hold on to.
Okay.
Yeah. What's also interesting to me about the Bible and Jesus in specific is that there's a lot of scripture in that book that explicitly says, like, God's ways are not our ways, and so I don't put pressure on myself to understand what is all supposed to happen or what it's really all supposed to mean. I kind of received what I received at the time. I use it to stay in my own lane and not hurt anybody else. And I think if those are the main takeaways, I think I took away some of the best you could from that book. And I don't really put a lot of pressure on myself specifically to understand, what's the right way or what's the right path.
Question. So you said you consider yourself Christian?
Yes.
Okay. That was a solid answer. Okay. Do you believe that Jesus rose from the dead? on the third day.
Yes.
Interesting. So obviously you believe in miracles.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
I definitely believe in miracles.
Okay. A lot of people don't. I mean, at one point I doubted miracles, and I had to kind of think through that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's fascinating.
No, I mean, we hear every day about medical miracles and the unexplained situations in nature that we don't know, like, and so they happen all the time. They're just not really highlighted a lot because I'm not sure why, but it's confusing, to people who maybe work in a certain field, or we think we've come so far, but then we still have so much to not answer for. And I think that's exciting. I think that is what I consider a miracle. Yeah.
So if I understand you correctly, I don't want to misrepresent your position or what you think, but you don't believe everything that Jesus said, just what seems right to you personally. Is that a fair assessment, or maybe not?
Yeah, no, that's definitely, that's a very accurate assessment, because there is so much in the book, in the Bible. And I think, I believe that it doesn't all have to stick out to everybody. I think certain things are going to stick out. We're all different. We all need something different. And at this point in my life, only what I have gathered to help me, to kind of keep me going, is what stuck out to me. Yeah. And there may be something different in there that sticks out to somebody else that they hold on to. And I think that's okay, because the book is so big. I think, there's enough for everybody in there. And I put a lot of pressure on myself to cover the whole thing, or even, for lack of a better word, believe. Yeah.
I do. So a question that comes to mind is, what basis do you have, or what reasons do you have for rejecting certain verses? The verses that you, I don't know if the right word is reject, but the ones that you don't believe in, what general reason do you have for not believing in those verses?
Yeah, well, like I said, I believe was probably not the right word. Maybe associate. Okay. Because if you read many of the books, many of the stories in there, they were for a specific time. You think about where we're at now, it was much different than 40 years ago, in the 60s or in the 20s. And the stories there and the beliefs there at that time that were written are much different than how the future unfolds. And so many things that were stated in specific books were relative to that time. Maybe whatever era they were living in, whatever belief systems they had at the time. And I think times changed as they do, as we know. So as you kind of read through it, essentially what happened in the past and what said was in the past may not apply to my present.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's fascinating. Well, one thought that flows into my mind.
Yeah, I saw that.
Really? You picked up on that? That's really good. It sounds like you're pretty good at reading people. Well, one thought that just kind of floated into my mind is, if as Christians we believe that the Bible is the Word of God, then even if we don't think that certain points are culturally applicable today, at the end of the day, the Word of God is always applicable, because His Word is always true. But only if it in fact is the Word of God in its entirety. And most Christians that I know do in fact believe that. By the way, and it is 4:50, and I feel like we have enough content. We could probably speak for Yeah,
we
at least
definitely could.
yeah, at least
Yeah.
another hour. I feel like we're just beginning to have
We
the conversation.
definitely were.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, quick response to that,
Mhm.
I guess. Or
Yeah.
do you have any thoughts on that?
I think it just depends on which context it's taken in. I don't take it all together. I think I break it up into pieces. I don't think it's really linear. I think I can bounce back and forth, and I think I don't think it's for me. I don't really take it all in as like I said. I think some are stories to teach us, and that's all it was. It was a story. It's not something that holds up for me that I will feel like I have to apply to my life. So if it's a specific scripture that says I shouldn't do something that I do now in my life, I'll kind of read further into that context, but that's going to be interpreted differently by different people. And so some will say, well, even though it was a story in the Old Testament, it's still something you should do now. And then I'll say, okay, well, I don't believe that.
Yeah.
And so again, we're back at that point where, okay, it's okay you don't believe that. It's fine you don't believe. I'm not mad at you. But then you will come across people who do get mad at me for that.
Okay.
And if I'm not mad at you for viewing it that way, I don't think you should be mad at me for viewing it that way.
Yeah. I would be so happy to lightly and in the friendliest way push back on that. But we only have like 5-10 minutes.
Yeah.
And we have to put all the equipment back and
to be continued
and stuff. Yeah. But this is just like the beginning of a really I think rich conversation, and I wish we had more time, and I think we will.
Yes.
So I appreciate you sharing your time. I think it took us longer to set all this up than the conversation itself, you know?
Yeah.
But Ramsey, I really appreciate you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I appreciate you as well.
Yeah. And we do have differences in beliefs on a lot of main points. But the cool thing is that we're here having a conversation, and it's friendly and it's civil.
It is.
And I think that's something that I'd like to leave people with, you know?
Well, at least in the studio, when I see you on the street, we'll see how
well, things might change, right? Yeah,
totally.
We'll see. That is still to be seen.
We're in front of a camera right now.
Okay. I appreciate your sincerity.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I guess I better be prepared.
I'm kidding.
There you go.
But yeah, thank you. And I know that you kind of gave me the floor a lot, but I'm equally interested in hearing more of kind of what you have to say and what your beliefs are.
Yeah, unpack my reasoning. Yeah, behind the things that I believe. Yeah,
or why you're interested in specific things that I believe. You know, one of my favorite parts about a conversation is the cues that they're the things that stick out to the person, and they follow up on a specific part. Yeah, and I'm like, okay, well, they're interested in that part. Why? Yeah, and kind of going down those roads, that kind of makes our conversation unique. Yeah, it makes every conversation unique because we're curious about something specific. Yeah, about people. Yeah, and I think once we kind of get to those parts, that's where the conversation gets a little bit more rich. Yeah. And yeah. All right, Ramsey. Well, that's it. Let's wrap it up. You got it, man. Appreciate it. How do you feel? Good. That's good. Yeah, that was fun. Yeah, I think people are going. I liked hearing myself. That's so honest. I loved it a lot, actually.